Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny. I'm here with Jim Johnson, project manager of Star Trek Adventures. You have like the best job. You're in charge of all these great Star Trek source books, and I don't know, has it hit you yet? Sometimes when you look back, like, oh my gosh, I'm putting out so much like these incredible resources for not just fans of role playing games, but fans of Star Trek. Has that hit you yet?
Yeah, thanks, Manny. Thanks. First, thanks for having me on the show again. Always appreciate talking to you. Always enjoy talking to you. It's just great to have an opportunity to talk to you and talk to your listeners and viewers about Star Trek Adventures. Yeah, I am. I've said it before. I am extraordinarily grateful every day to be working on this game line at Modiphius and to be working on Star Trek and to be contributing to the gigantic tapestry that is Star Trek in some small capacity. I mean, the franchise has been around for very nearly 60 years now, and to have been working on this game for 9 of those years, I've said it before, but I would never have imagined that this gig would have lasted this long. That we're into year 9, going on to year 10 here is just astounding to me.
Today, everyone, we're talking about this new source book, 23rd Century Campaign Guide, which this captures old school Star Trek, the OG, the animated series,
Mm-hmm.
even the newer stuff like the first 2 seasons of Discovery, Strange New Worlds,
Yep.
and of course, which I keep forgetting about, the first 6 movies of Star Trek.
Yep.
So yeah, this is a very interesting book. I was able to look through this, and I have to admit, when I first got this book, and now, of course, anything that what Diffusers puts out for Star Trek, I always get very excited about. But there was
Mm-hmm.
this voice in the back of my head that said, "It's like I wonder how essential I will find this book." And the reason why
Mm.
I say that is because I've watched so much Star Trek, so
Mm-hmm.
much of this. If you tell me, hey, let's run something right now, in my mind I have like, okay, I have an idea of like maybe like the basic adversaries, but this book is a wonderful collection of information. It's a very dense book,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that there's a lot of information about everything from technology to politics, and does a great job in outlining the timeline of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but my favorite section, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. There's a chapter in here about game mastering in different like uh, uh, different like sections of the 23rd century, which I've never
Mm-hmm.
seen before. Usually it's just like something very general.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how much information this book contains. And then I realized after I looked at it, it's like, oh, okay, I see now. This is this is not a book for like, I mean, yeah, you can use this for one shots, definitely. But if you have a campaign going on,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're playing with fans of Star Trek who are very meticulous about what's happening at this certain year with not just with the Federation, but with whether it be with the Orions, the Vulcans, the Klingons, and so forth. This book is tremendous for that. But I'm sorry, it's not really a question. I'm just really enjoying what I'm seeing so far, and
No,
it's
I'm
really
grateful. I'm grateful to hear it. Absolutely. I'll take that, and I'll take that back to the team and say that it was well received. So yeah, I think you're right. Information density is one of my key design goals in second edition for all of our products, especially because we've been experimenting with shorter books. 128, 129, 132 pages. The expiration guide was 144, but we're trying to keep it. You know, the not that we got indulgent with first edition, but trying to be really more stringent on page count. And I'm really challenging the writers because we have a tighter package to work with. Um, really pack as much information as you can into the pages that you got. And I think you're right. This is the first Star Trek RPG book I can remember in the long history of Star Trek RPG books that have taken the entirety of the 23rd century and chunked it up into gameable sections, and then provided a chapter on game mastering this period, and then also playing in this period. Because I mean, that's the interesting thing about the 23rd century, is that sections of it have very different tones and very different feels. And so if you're playing in the first part of the century, it's going to feel differently than what you're doing in the latter part of the century. And so we're trying to pack in just as much information as we can to cover the entirety of the century.
so in this book. There are 7 chapters. The first chapter with has some really great optional game mechanics,
Hmm.
which let me see if possible, I'm gonna try to save that for last. And then the chapter two, chapter three, chapter four, and chapter five.
Hmm.
I'll say them briefly. Chapter two is Growth of the Federation. Chapter three, War in the Red Angel Crisis. Chapter four, Federation and Empire. And chapter five, Conspiracies of and the Daw. It's all about lore.
Yeah, I mean, those four chapters are a lot of lore about what's going on in those specific time periods, and there's some great sidebars in there about different things that are happening within those periods of time. We did some great graphics to show you how the like the rank insignia and the deltas progress from section to section. There's a little bit of there's a uniform information in the front end papers there. So we're really trying to show in these four chapters what's happening in that period of time and how that is relevant to whatever campaigns or adventures you're running. Because we could have just kept it as lore, but like there's so many great resources out there already, like the Star Trek Encyclopedia and Memory Alpha and stuff. You can find that lore out there, right? But we wanted to make it specific to the RPG. So I really encourage the writers, when you're writing this stuff, think about this from an RPG standpoint. You're a game master or you're a player. What about those periods of play can you use in your game? And that's something that we haven't really seen in an RPG, at least in a long time. I think Last Unicorn and Facet did it a little bit, but of course they didn't have access to the entirety of the franchise like we do. Like the newer series didn't exist 30 years ago, right? So we were able to sprinkle in Discovery and Strange New Worlds and the animated series and everything else. So we try to make as complete of a picture of the 23rd century, at least as we understand it, right now.
Mm. And again, I really love how all that is organized,
Hmm.
so that you're not feeling as amount of information there is in these chapters. I never felt looking through this that I felt lost.
Oh, good.
Um, the last part of the book, chapter six and chapter seven, playing the 23rd century, game mastering the 23rd century, phenomenal sections. I love that. I love that there's role playing information of how to play characters or run scenarios in specific parts of the 23rd century. I don't know. I just found that really impressive. So let me ask you an overall question about what this book can give to veteran players of Star Trek Adventures.
Hmm.
Uh, what would you say outside of the rules mechanics, which we'll get into soon? What are some things that you think that will interest um, veteran players?
So aside from the new mechanics that we've dropped in to help with character generation and character development, and some of the optional rules that we dropped in here, I think veteran players, maybe they would appreciate the hyper focus on the 23rd century. So like as opposed to it being like generic Star Trek or 22nd century or 24th century or even 32nd century, we really tried to take this book and really really super focus it on everything that happens in the 23rd century, even breaking it down into those four kind of chunks of the century. And I think that'll help veteran players and also new players, but especially veteran players, like really put your blinders on and super focus on that, like a 20-year period of time. Like what's happening in the original series from 2260 to 2270. Like that's a very specific, chunk of the franchise's time. And a lot of stuff happens in there, of course, because we see it on screen in the original series and the animated series. And so we really try to pack in a lot of information in here, like get into that mindset. Your character is, in Starfleet in this period of time, but they've also got some backstory now because now we know what happened in Strange New Worlds, and we know what happened in the first two seasons of Discovery leading up to the original series, right? So hopefully that's giving a broader picture for players and game masters to sense okay, we're going to run an original series campaign, but look at the wealth of information we have leading up to that we can fold into character generation, so that our characters just don't kind of exist in a vacuum heading into the original series, right? I mean, you can still do that. You don't have you can ignore all the new Trek if you wanted to. Why? Because there's so much great content there, right? There's just so much great information happening in Strange New Worlds and Discovery. So we were really trying with this book to paint the broad overall picture of everything that happened in the century, even the threads of what was happening with the Klingons, right? Because the Klingons were adversaries, and then they had the brutal war, and then we went into a Cold War, and then even by the end of the century, it was starting to thaw out, right? They were moving toward the path of becoming allies, which we see happen in the 24th century. But so there's a through line there throughout the entire century, and we tried to hit on that in the book, so that you could be playing a Klingon campaign, you could be playing a Starfleet campaign, and you can have that in your character's head, like in your head, so that you're able to add that thread to your role playing, so that all the characters in an original series campaign have that in their thought process, right? That there's the whole thing with the Klingons and the Romulans and everything else that's going on.
So maybe we should just go ahead and talk about character options and
Hmm. Sure.
optional rules that I have here.
Hmm.
Um, I have to say the new environment options is a fantastic idea. Let me see if I could paraphrase what you've written here, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So the idea of this, and at first I was a bit confused, like what's this replacing or adding exactly? And it's what's helping you is it's giving you options so that if a character that let's take Worf growing up on Earth. If you have a Klingon growing up on Earth, they have the options of having what you call your environment options so that they can gain certain attribute bonuses for being on Earth than
Hmm.
they would be if they were in another planet and so forth. Am I
Hmm.
correct? This is such a great idea. Where did the idea for this come from?
I think this was mostly Nathan Dowdell, the system developer for 2D20, and also he writes all the mechanics for all the main mechanics now for Star Trek Adventures. I think he and I were just throwing ideas around, and he said, "Well, why don't we expand on the um, environment options in the core book, and get again, like super focused on things that are relevant to the 23rd century." And I think by taking the some of the key planets and expanding those out into a viable environment option. I mean, you could do it with the core book, but this just provides more specific detail, kind of drilling down a bit. And I think what it does is I think it just shows um, how much you can play with the system and get deeper into certain categories, right? You can take each step of the life path and blow it out and add a ton of detail to it if you wanted to, and that's just going to make ideally that would just make your characters richer, like your characters, your supporting characters, your NPCs. If you walk them through parts of the life path, or even just pick and choose sections of it to use, you can really get into some interesting character ideas. Like maybe you're human, but you grew up on Ryza. What does that mean? Right, and we've tried to provide a little bit more specific advice about that. Maybe you're half Klingon and you grew up on, I don't know, Tellar Prime. What does that mean for your character? That means they've got some certain things that they grew up with that have embedded themselves into their character, and that helps them become even more unique than not to say that any character in Star Trek or Star Trek Adventures is like a cookie cutter, but I think Nathan and I have really tried to take second edition and really expand options so that every character feels really unique, right? So that so basically, it's just more options, more things to throw at you into your toolkit, and think, oh, I could use this or I could not use it, but just trying to give people more options, but also for the players and game masters who kind of have um, the design bug in their head, right? Like they kind of want to design their own mechanics or design elements of mechanics. This is just another way to give them some ideas to say, hey, you can take that environment step of the life path and really dig down deep into different home worlds. I mean, you could, if you were to expand this even further, you could be like, okay, what would a what would a Klingon character be like if they grew up on I don't know, Binar, right? I mean, it's different. It's kind of weird, but it could happen. I mean, anything's possible in the Star Trek universe. But how would that Klingon come out of that? How would they be different? How would they have a different perspective? What's the story? Like, why did this Klingon grow up on Binar in the first place? Like, how did that happen? And then that's just grist for the storytelling mill, right? And that'll create threads for the player and the game master to pull on within the context of the game, and hopefully add some really cool some cool moments and some cool texture.
Mm. And just to correct myself, I mentioned attribute. It's also new values and new department
Mm-hmm.
adjustments.
Yep.
Um, Another part in the optional rules section, new career path option
Mm-hmm.
for free trader. It's funny. Our group was just talking about this because we were talking about like, all right, what can we play outside of Starfleet? And
Mm-hmm.
then we were thinking about like, oh, maybe we can do this and adjust that, and voila, it's right here. So there's a new career path option now, so that if you want to try something else that's not so Starfleet centered,
Yeah.
free trader is now an option.
Hmm.
Would you like to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have a number of examples throughout the franchise of independent, independent merchants or independent traders or whatever. I mean, you got you got Cyrano Jones in the original series, and you got Neelix in Voyager, and you've got I mean, there's a bunch in DS9. I think Cassidy Yates might be a good example there. And there's a couple in Lower Decks too. But so like that independent character, they're not Starfleet, they're not the Klingon Defense Force, they're just doing their own thing. And I think with second edition, we've really been trying to expand the character options so that you can play non-Starfleet characters or Starfleet characters or other civilization characters. And I don't know that we really, I can't remember if we got to free trader or not in first edition. Maybe in the player's guide. But we just thought this is a good place we can expand it a little bit. It fits into the original series because, of course, you got Cyrano Jones and a few other independent traders. Oh, Akana, the outrageous Okana is another example. He was in Lower Decks, and also no, wait, he was in, was it Lower Decks or was it Prodigy? No, it was Lower Decks, I think. But yeah, so I mean, that is a character type in Star Trek that we've seen numerous times, and why not give players an opportunity to play that if that's something that they wanted to do? So we just we threw that in as a new career path option. Again, showing the flexibility of the system, and if you follow the general template of a career path, you could make up as many as you want, right? Just get creative and throw them in there. So yeah, I think that was the intent, was to just to further expand the scope of possibility for second edition, so that you don't feel like you're limited to playing a Starfleet character.
New career events. I Okay, so the idea of this, it looks like, is certain major events that happen in this timeline
Hmm.
can be used to help not only give your character a great backstory
Hmm.
behind it, but also affects again your attributes, your departments a little bit here and there, your focuses. This is really awesome because for as a game master, I now have something I can use for non-player characters, where
Hmm.
when they come from a specific event that has affected them greatly.
Hmm.
Um, what can you tell us about this part?
Yeah, the career events were a really intentional addition to the book, in that we wanted to try to bring in more of that 23rd century feel right into character generation or right into character development. So instead of using the core book and rolling randomly on the table of career events and coming up with interesting career events that you would have to kind of make up and customize, we wanted to pull events right out of canon, like right out of the episodes, right out of the movies, and say this specific thing happened, and this specific thing is something that your character was involved in, and that helps tie the characters more closely to the timeline of what events in the century, and maybe also helps the player think about, oh, my character lived through the Romulan border skirmishes. How is that going to influence them as a character? How would that change their values? How would that change their focuses? How would that change like what they decided to focus on? Because we know throughout the franchise, science and exploration isn't all that Starfleet does, right? I mean, they are also expected to defend the Federation or defend holdings and outposts and all that kind of stuff. So how do these specific 23rd century events connect to the character, make the character connect to the timeline, and how does that influence how the character developed? So I think it was great that Nathan added these. I think we have 12 options in here, and gosh, there's so many events that happened in the 23rd century. We could have made this this could have been the whole book, just career events, right? But we just didn't have the room to do everything, so we just took the best ones that or not the best, but we just tried to find the really big tentpole moments from the 23rd century and say, yeah, whale probe crisis, destruction of Praxis. These are big important events that had a longer lasting impact on the timeline of the franchise than just isolated moments here and there.
It's funny you mentioned Whale Probe Crisis. I was about to mention about this event because it's the one Star Trek 4 is the one movie I get asked about every once in a while about running a scenario for, because it's
Uh-huh.
a uh, Star Trek 4 is a something about that movie is very I don't want to say it's different from the other movies, but it there's a different feeling, and I think a lot of players want like the idea of time traveling and having like almost like awkward situations of talking with people in the past, even though we are the people of the past
Yep.
in that
Hmm.
perspective. So when I saw that, I was very happy about that because now I have something that I can share with my players, and I'll be very thrilled about that.
Hmm.
I also noticed there's an option rules for like uh, casualties, fatigue, trauma, scars.
Hmm.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, if I remember right, the casualties and the fatigue rules, I think those might have been in the player's guide for first edition. And what we've done is we've refresh or Nathan refreshed those and cleaned them up to include in second edition. And then the rules on scars and trauma, if I'm not mistaken, I think those came out of the Federation Klingon War Tactical Campaign book, where we added a lot of details in there about how wars can have lingering trauma and how you can have scars on these things. And so Nathan took the opportunity to take those rules from the tactical campaign book and update them so that they fit into the second edition aesthetic. Since wounds and damage and stuff work a little bit differently, since we don't have the challenge dice anymore, we wanted to make sure that those rules were ported in to second edition, and this just felt like the right place to put them because a lot of stuff happens in the 23rd century. There is that hot war between the Klingons and the Federation. I mean, even the start of the century comes out of the Romulan War from Archer's timeline, and then there's a lot of isolated conflicts throughout the century. And then you've got Khan and all the challenges that happened in the movies. So it seems like a good place to put in trauma and scars because these characters don't go through these major events unscathed, right? I mean, we see a lot of especially in Discovery, right? The first few seasons of Discovery, there was a lot of trauma and a lot of scars in there, and we felt like that was an important part of characters to include. So this felt like the right place to include it.
Hmm. And just to let viewers, listeners know, this part here is just the optional rules. You don't have to
Oh yeah,
add them to your
absolutely.
game.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
really, the vast majority of the rule set is ultimately optional. I mean, that's true for any game, but yeah, these are optional rules. You're not required to use them, but certainly have that session zero with your group, and if they're all comfortable including trauma and scars and casualties and stuff in your game, by all means use them. But yeah, talk to everybody first, so that you're not surprising anybody.
Hmm. Uh, so before we wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, books like The Shackleton Expanse, do you
Mm-hmm.
feel that this new book that deals with 20th century could be a good companion piece with that, and maybe with your other campaign books?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're kind of, for second edition, we're kind of redefining what a campaign guide is. Where the Shackleton Expanse was a setting. It provided the setting of the Shackleton Expanse and Narendra Station, and then also provided you a 10-part campaign plus a 46 mission briefs or something. So that's like that's years of gaming right there in your hands. For this campaign guide, because I didn't have 300 pages to work with because that's just that was an experiment that we've done. We were going a different route with this one. Um, with this campaign guide, we really wanted to provide a really solid overview of the 23rd century, do deep dives in it where we could, and then say, the campaign is yours. If you want to make a campaign out of it, here's things to be thinking about. We didn't want to spoon feed a campaign to game masters and players again, partly because we have such a wealth of material from first edition that is very easy to translate to second edition. So we didn't want to spend all the word count focusing on more adventures and more campaigns. We want the players and the game masters to be creating your stories and don't just run our stories. Create your own stories. And here's the guidelines and some framework to think about in terms of the century. Does that answer your question, or did I miss it?
Oh no, no, that's perfect.
Okay.
I know the Shackleton Expanse specifically has a lot of optional rules about how you can run the game,
Hmm.
and I can't imagine a better companion than this book,
Hmm.
which helps even map out the timelines as well.
Oh, that's the
Uh,
part of your question I missed. Yeah, I think because the Shackleton Expanse campaign, the first chunk of it takes place in the 23rd century, and a bunch of the mission briefs take place in the 23rd century. I think you could very easily pair up the Shackleton Expanse book with this book, and you use this book to get a deeper dive into the 23rd century and what was happening, in the larger galaxy, while the specific things were happening in the Shackleton Expanse and the Beta Quadrant. And I think those two would dovetail really nicely together. I think I'd really love to hear from fans who are new to Star Trek, where this is like maybe this is their first book or their first supplement. Maybe they don't know a huge amount about the 23rd century. They can read this and go, "Oh, this is what's happening on a meta level in the 23rd century," and then we can do a deeper dive into the Shackleton Expanse campaign, the first couple episodes, or even run the there's a three-part campaign in the tricorder set, a Keyhole of Eternity, which you can get by. You don't have to buy the tricorder set; you can get it by itself as a PDF. But you could use that in conjunction with this book easily too. I know we've got a bunch of standalone adventures that are all original series, but I think what this book can do then, pairing up with any of those other books and products, is to just give you the broad strokes of what's happening in the 23rd century, and then you can start getting specific. I think actually the other thing you can do with those campaigns, those pre-existing campaigns, Shackleton Expanse and the other ones, is if you wanted to change the era of play, like maybe you want to run Shackleton Expanse in the early part of the 23rd century, you could totally do that. Just read the advice in the book and then just adapt accordingly. I think you maybe change out some of the adversaries and keep in mind the technology sections, because some of the technology wasn't quite as advanced earlier in the century than it was later in the century, and that might impact what ships you decide to pick. Like you could use, I guess you could use Utopia Planitia to pick a space frame from earlier in the century as opposed to later in the century. Like maybe you're on a ship that exists before the Constitution class came out. Maybe you do a campaign based on the Daedalus class, right? Um, or one of the other ships that are available to you. So I think we were really intentional about making this a useful book for both first edition and second edition, and I mean, and Captain's Log if you're going that route, because the lore is the lore, right? That doesn't change really depending on what game you're playing. It's just like this is what happened. This is the franchise. This is the history of the future, basically. Um, so yeah, I hope folks get a lot of use out of it.
mm. Sorry, I lied. I have another question.
Oh, no problem.
I we didn't get talk too much about the art in this book.
Mhm.
I love this cover. This
Yeah.
is you have such a we have the iconic characters on there,
Hmm.
and it's funny. I remember we talked about artwork before, and I know there was concern about like you didn't have all the rights from Paramount at the time, and you
Hmm.
wanted to use some more of the classic characters, but you couldn't. And
Hmm.
voila, look at this. This is that totally changed in a few years ago since we first talked about this.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think this cover is a bit of an experiment for us. I mean, you know us; we've always been tinkering and playing with the books and what we're doing, and we all of our second edition books up to this point have had a cast of iconic characters that we created. The characters that were in the quick start are iconic characters, and we've been trying to reuse them in cover art and also in interior art a lot, just so that there's common touchstones throughout the game line, and so that you see these same characters pop up from time to time. And provides a sense of continuity, right? But for this, because this is the 23rd century campaign guide, and we're moving into the 60th anniversary of Star Trek, we thought, oh, maybe we should try something a little different. So instead of it being our iconic characters, maybe we go with the canon characters and just see what happens, right? See what kind of reaction there is. And so I'm really curious. Like, I mean, it's only been a couple hours really since we put this thing on pre-order, but so far the response has been really positive, and I think Paolo Pugioni, who did the cover for us, I think he did a fantastic job of capturing these characters, because this is all original art. These aren't screen caps or still shots or whatever. This is all original art, and I think I think it's important to recognize that the 23rd century had very specific, very large personalities. Like, I mean, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Uhura, Saru, Burnham. I mean, there's so many important characters that originated in the 23rd century that it seemed to make sense to us to, like, let's try something a little different for this book. So I'll be really curious to see what the overall fan reaction is once it's got some legs underneath it. But I'm just heartened to hear that you seem to like it. It is a wraparound cover. On the back cover is a planet, and then the original series Enterprise in orbit around it. So once you see the full cover, you'll get a different sense of it. But this is the main cover. This is what everyone's going to see. Of course, is the front cover. So hopefully folks dig it. And if
Yeah,
they like it, then maybe we'll do something similar for a future book. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But we'll definitely continue to use the iconic characters for second edition on other covers as well.
yeah. I want this as a poster. If this is ever available, I
That
gotta.
would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
So, is there anything else about this book that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, definitely spend some time looking at the sidebars because there's some really great sidebars in here. Just touching on different aspects of the franchise and touching on different moods and tones that we're trying to impart upon the different periods of play. There's just some really good sidebars in here, so please check those out. And then also spend some time enjoying the art. I mean, we just talked about the artwork of the cover, but there's some really fun artwork in here. There's a Enterprise era away team getting ready to play, have a picnic on a planet. When one guy's got a soccer ball, getting ready to have some fun. And then we also had some fun with the Monster Maroons, the classic movie era maroon uniforms.
Hmm.
I wanted to put a little bit of spin on those. So there's a piece of art in here of some characters in the Monster Maroons, but it's in the Lower Decks style of animation. So I got a picture of that in there, and then I also had Aaron Harvey. He was one of the main writers on the animated series source book, or not the source book, but the animated series PDF that we did. But he also co-wrote the official guide to the animated series. So I wanted him to draw a Star Trek piece of the characters in the Monster Maroon uniforms, but in the style of the animated series, which of course takes place 10, 15 years before the movie era, right? But I just wanted to play with those art styles and those animated designs and see how it would look if we were using the Monster Maroons as that key design. And I think they came out great. I'm really curious to see what fans think of those. But yeah, this is absolutely a love letter to original Star Trek, the 23rd century. I hope fans see all that love that has been put into here, and I hope they get a lot of use out of it. Again, do spend some time looking at the sidebars and the artwork, but also, like you alluded to earlier in the conversation, read it carefully because there is just a huge amount of information packed into every page of this book. Because we were trying to do as much as we can with limited amount of space, and I remember talking to you and other folks. I've long wanted to do era source books, right, for first edition, and of course we moved into second edition, but we still wanted to find a way. How do we do era source books? Do we do series by series, or do we do broader strokes, century by century? And ultimately, the century by century won out. So we're trying out the 23rd century, see how that works, and if it's successful, we'll probably do more. But it just really depends on how this is received. And so I'm eager to hear everybody's feedback. So get on the Discord, get on the fan groups, talk about what you like, talk about what you don't like. Send me an email, send support@modifius.com emails. I will get them all eventually. I'll see them because we have a healthy internal discussion about all things Modifius. So don't be shy. Like tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, because that's how things change. And fans, I hope by this point, have the confidence that Nathan and I and the other folks on the team are listening to everything that the fans are saying. Right? We have this entire game from first edition to second edition has been shaped in large part by the feedback we've been getting from fans over the years, and that's not going to stop because the fans are the ones responsible for the game's success, right? I mean, we can make stuff, but if it doesn't get bought and used and played with, then it would not be around for 9 years, almost 10 years now. So yeah, fans, if you're liking what you're seeing or you're not liking what you're seeing, let us know, because we will absolutely take constructive criticism all day long.
Hmm. So anyone that's interested in knowing more about this book or want to purchase this, right now there's a pre-order available, which I'll put a link in the description below.
Hmm.
Um, if this video, if I remember, a month down the line, and the physical copies available or the PDF copies available to Drive to RPG, I'll see if I can come back and change those links as well.
Cool.
Um, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Star Trek Adventures, the role-playing game, the
Yeah, Manny, thank
2030.
you. Always happy to be on the show. Always love what you're doing. It's my happy lunch break to watch some of your stuff. So thank you for everything you're doing for Star Trek Adventures and for Modifius, but also for the bigger hobby. Couldn't do it without you.
All right, this has definitely been a joy. So, everyone out there, be safe, live long and prosper. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, everybody. Be well.